Remember the end of the season? I don't know what you was on, but you was mad as hell. He started coming with the cross, boom, pulling up. I said, okay, dude, my number of years are short. Nah, that last game, boy, you put on, we was like, damn. I remember Jack came up to you. I came up to you. It was like, damn, bro. Ain't nobody gonna be able to fuck with you after that. Nelly was like, guard him. I was like, man, we can't guard him. Get out of here. It's over, dog.
Most NBA stars have a game that announces their arrival. And for Kevin Durant, that game happened on April 16th, 2008 against the Warriors. This was the time when the Seattle SuperSonics were leaving Seattle. But while one story was ending, another was just beginning. And on that final night, Kevin Durant made NBA players fear him while establishing himself as a future scoring machine unlike anyone. But before any of that happened, there was one major problem. Kevin Durant had already established himself as a major talent since his Texas days. There, he averaged over 25 points per game and won National Player of the Year. So the problem wasn't whether he could play, the problem was whether his body could survive basketball at the highest level. Every discussion about Durant seemed to start with the observation that he was very skinny. While people were impressed by the talent, many still believed his frame would eventually become a limitation. And because Greg Oden was viewed as the safer prospect, Durant ended up being selected second overall in the 2007 NBA Draft. However, for Seattle, that felt like winning the lottery.
And we were, just praying that he was going to fall to us, that Portland was going to take Greg Oden and Seattle at the time would be lucky enough to have Kevin.
Carlesimo would also talk about how quickly his doubts about KD were cleared.
And I remember when I called Rick up and Rick Barnes, I said, Rick, how good is he? And he started talking like, superlatives. He said, you're not going to believe how good he is. And it's true. I mean, it took maybe 3 minutes of watching one practice, and you're just shaking your head going, wow.
But there was still another problem, because Kevin Durant's Sonics were one of the worst teams in basketball. They finished the season with just 20 wins, and the franchise was surrounded by uncertainty. Rumors about relocation were growing louder. National attention was almost non-existent. Most fans weren't staying up to watch Seattle games, and because of that, Durant's development was happening quietly. So, the league wasn't paying as much attention. They didn't fear him. Once in the league, Durant averaged over 20 points per game, and every month he looked more comfortable and always improving his game. But he was yet to have that one game that would make everyone pause. All that changed on April 16, 2008, in a game that few people cared about. There were no playoff implications or championship stakes. The Seattle SuperSonics entered that night with 20 wins, while the Golden State Warriors were already heading home for the summer. Yet, sometimes the most important moments happen when nobody is paying attention. And from the opening minutes, Durant looked different. Not just different, but completely comfortable. The kind of comfortable that scares people.
Lob to Durant, works on Barrett, spins away from, goes baseline and shoots a little runner.
Oh, he is an offensive force.
3-on-2, Durant to the rim, step.
The first few baskets felt normal enough. A pull-up jumper here, a transition finish there, then another jumper, then another. Suddenly, the Warriors found themselves watching a rookie score from every area of the floor without ever looking rushed. Everything looked effortless. There was no wasted movements, no forced possessions, no moments where Durant appeared overwhelmed by the responsibility. Every shot looked like something he had already practiced 1,000 times before. As the game continued, Golden State began to switch up defenders on him to try to stop him, but nothing worked. By the end of the night, Kevin Durant had 42 points and 13 rebounds with 6 assists. his first double-double from 18 made field goals on just 25 attempts. The stat line was ridiculous, but statistics only tell part of the story. The bigger story was the feeling, because for the first time, Durant no longer looked like a promising rookie learning the league. He looked like someone the league now feared, and you can tell from what those who played against him on that night said. Looking back on that night, former Warriors point guard Baron Davis said this while on the Draymond Green podcast.
Remember the end of the season, I don't know what you was on, but you was mad as hell. He started coming with the cross, boom, pulling up. I said, okay, dude, my number of years are short.
What makes that reaction so powerful is that it came from someone who had already seen everything the NBA could offer. Baron Davis wasn't a young player getting caught up in the moment. He was an established veteran who had competed against elite talent for years. Yet, Durant's performance left him with such memories.
Nah, that last game, boy, you put on, we was like, damn. I remember Jack came up to you. I came up to you. It was like, damn, bro. Ain't nobody gonna be able to fuck with you after that. Nelly was like, guard him. I was like, man, we can't guard him. Get out of here. It's over, dog.
As the game continued, the realization spread across the floor. The Warriors weren't simply getting beaten by a talented rookie. They were watching a player whose physical tools made no sense. He was too tall for guards, too skilled for big men, and too comfortable creating his own shot against almost any defender. Keep in mind that at the time, KD was just a rookie playing for a 20-win team. He hadn't won an MVP or any scoring titles. Yet, the people sharing the court with him could already see where this was heading. Here's another player, Al Harrington, talking about that night.
Yeah, so it's my Seattle memory is definitely Kevin Durant. Just seeing how special he was going to be as a rookie. Like I said, I think that game he might have gave us 40, and I knew that he was going to be a force to be reckoned with. And obviously, look at the Hall of Fame career he's had.
These veterans aren't talking about a hot shooting night. They were talking about seeing the future before everyone else did. It was just a preview. A preview to when he reminded the league who he was.
I'm Kevin Durant. You know who I am. Y'all know who I am.
Or when opponents get like this during a post-game interview.
What more could you have done to slow Kevin down, especially in the first half?
I answer this.
Go ahead. Answer.
What you think? You played basketball before? What you think? Honestly, that's an honest question. What you think? You watch a lot of basketball. You with ESPN. I mean, he's Kevin Durant.
I promise we tried.
Looking back now, the most remarkable part of Durant's 42-point explosion isn't that it happened. It's how familiar it feels. When people watch the highlights today, they're essentially watching the same player who would eventually win scoring titles, MVP awards, championships, and establish himself as one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. Most young stars spend years figuring out how to become great. Durant looked like someone who already understood exactly who he was, and his coach certainly saw it and spoke about it.
And he won 2 games for us. We had won 19 or 20 games that first year.
Right.
In Seattle, Kevin had 2 game-winning shots. I remember the first one he made was at Atlanta. I'm not real smart, but I was smart enough to know if we're going to run a play at the end of the game to get it to Kevin, he can get the hell out of his way. And he did it against Atlanta on the road, and he did it against Denver late in the year.
That philosophy would eventually become the philosophy of entire organizations. Give KD the ball and get out of the way. For the next decade and a half, defenders would spend countless hours studying him. Coaches would build game plans around him, and some of the greatest players in the world would admit there wasn't much they could do once he got into rhythm. The final game in Seattle SuperSonics history is often remembered as an ending, but for Kevin Durant, it was really a beginning. What looked like a meaningless regular season game became the first glimpse of a future superstar operating at a level that most players could barely comprehend. Long before the MVP trophies, the championships, and the scoring titles arrived, that night, KD made NBA players fear him. The only difference is that on April 16, 2008, very few people were paying attention. But the veterans who shared the floor with him noticed, and eventually, the entire basketball world noticed too. But since then, many things have happened in KD's career, and if you want to understand some of it, watch Charles Barkley Was Still Right About Kevin Durant next.